you think of Google, they're this massive corporation that have access to limitless data. Like they are one of these corporations that when you engage with it, you're like or you're curious about a subject, and you're like, oh, let me Google it. You know,
Yeah.
it's become a word,
Yeah.
right? And you know that's when you know these
Look down a
companies
little
and
bit. Yep.
these corporations have become like powerful because they're impacting people's day-to-day lives in many different ways. And specifically when we're talking about like machine learning models and large language models, what we're looking at are like these massive data sets that are just in a way systematically you know like set to fit particular parameters that fulfill specific needs. And like in very layman terms, like when we're talking about technology and computers, it's very simple. It boils down to the input, the process, and the output, and that's essentially like the scope of like looking at how technology, typically, obviously, like there are deviations and variations in multiple different contexts,
Okay.
depending on your field of study. But generally, like, you know, a computer is really systematic, and they're in theory really dumb without having human beings to like navigate these particular systems and design them. So like ChatGPT, for example, a lot of people are fearful that ChatGPT will take people's jobs, that AI will do a lot of these things, and while those feelings may or may not be valid, like
Do you
they
think they are though? Like to a certain extent? Like, do you think eventually it will like take everyone's jobs, or because like I ain't gonna front, like for me myself, it's like it's little ways that I'm like, nah, I can't. But then when I see things like even if it's so, for example, this one guy that used to do my, and this is just content or whatever. But this one guy that used to help me with my content. I remember when he was helping me with my content, and I was paying him $400 a month just to like run off questions that was like, oh shit, how did you get those questions? That's crazy. And then in the midst of him doing that one time, he was like, yo, bro, I be getting all these shits off Chat GPT, you know what I'm saying, blah, blah. And I found that shit out, and I never paid that nigga again. And I used Chat GPT and just using it. So that's a small example of how it may happen. But, you know, I feel like it's a lot of jobs that it's impossible for Chat GPT to take. But like I don't know, like so like the Gemini thing that you was mentioning of, I don't know, but I believe it may be similar to like the friend thing you was mentioning, and I think that's kind of dope because I feel like a lot of people going through, even if it's not just a mental illness, you could just be missing somebody, or I mean, some motherfuckers just don't want to be out here talking to people all the time, and you could just have somebody to talk to and joke with, and laugh about little separate things. I think that shit is dope, but I
yeah
can see why people would get upset, or even if it's like I'm a husband and my wife is talking to Chat GPT more than she talked to me. You know what I'm saying? Little shit like that. But
yeah
I don't know. Like I mean, I'm not really scared of it. Like I'm all about AI. Like that's why I said I bought this. Or I have this new thing. I bought me some AI ebooks, and I bought me some AI ebooks that I can resell. And so I'm gonna make sure that for the barber community, anybody that is interested, oh yeah, I'm gonna make sure that I know all the technology to help you out. Even if it's little stuff like the SEO thing, you know what I'm saying? Like I found out SEO, I want to say maybe 2-3 months ago, and I didn't know what it was. And since I found out what it is, I've been trying to figure out how to master it so I'll be able to utilize it for myself,
yeah
for my business. You know what I'm saying? I want to be able to make money online and you know what I'm saying? Look at that money grow and learn how to teach my kids how to do it as well, because that's I understand, eventually there won't be an internet, or eventually, the internet could go down or whatever the case may be. But at the same time, while it's here, and that's the cash cow for a lot of businesses, mostly all of them in 2025. You know what I mean? It's like just got to figure it out. There's no use to
yeah
being scared of it.
yeah
But the AI is a whole different. You know what I mean? Like all of it together, because I know the SEO is a part of it. You know what I'm saying? So I don't, like you said, the automation and like everything else. That's the part that I don't necessarily know about. And I get how other people would be cautious about it because it's uncharted waters. You know what I'm saying? Like,
100%. I think like one of the biggest things, like for example, like job security, like I think part of what scares a lot of people is change, and I think change plays a big impact in like a lot of people's resistance to new things.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like regardless of who you are, like no one likes to be thrown off what they already know because it kind of pushes you to be uncomfortable and learn new things.
Definitely.
And I think it just depends on the kind of character that you have as an individual.
Yeah.
But at least in the context of artificial intelligence, to answer your question, I don't think that it's going to take jobs from people. And part of why I say that is because ultimately, like in the same way that machines can be very beneficial, like I gave you that analogy earlier, you have a car outside, but that car can't leave without you driving it.
Yeah.
And in that same way, we have control over the automation of all these tools and how they're being utilized. And I think in general, like there's a big digital literacy crisis in America because there's a lot of resistance to like exploring the potential of new technology, especially in education.
Okay.
Like one of the biggest things right now that people are talking about include like some people argue that with the
Go down just a little
introduction
bit.
of
Yeah, right
like
there.
artificial intelligence in particular, it diminishes people's ability to think critically and think creatively because people are heavily relying on these machines to
Yeah, do it for 'em.
yeah, exactly.
Like the creative.
But I think what it boils down to, at the end of the day, I think human beings are species of convenience. We like tools that make things easier for us. And
Yeah.
they just present in a way like different fonts. Like if you think about, the early, like, at the start of like our genealogy as hominid species, like we've always been a technological oriented species. Like we've developed tools before we had the comprehension to understand exactly what we were doing. Like these hominid species were cooking meals before they understand the concept of cooking, right? So in the same way that mathematics introduced the calculator, that didn't diminish the problems that we were solving. If anything, it improved the quality of problems that we were solving.
Okay.
So I would argue that I think it's about utilization and how people are using these tools to aid them in their journeys in their respective fields. Like it's okay to be critical and and critique like these machines because that's what makes them better.
Yeah.
So like I think like it's great to encourage conversations about like why a particular machine sucks or why it's harmful or why it infringes on your data privacy or your individual privacy.
Yeah.
But it'd be naive to not acknowledge like how much impact it has. Like earlier you mentioned SEO, and for those who don't know, SEO is search engine optimization, and essentially like these search engines and these browsers are designed to look for particular keywords that a user is looking for, and it pulls from large amounts of. I like to use the analogy of like a big library, and all these different websites are books, and these books are what people are looking for. And what makes it different is that people are looking for particular books, so it chooses key terminology that line within the archive of said books, and in this case, these are websites, and chooses what more likely fits the need of the user that's engaging with that the search engine and is looking for a particular thing.
Like it makes it more precise.
Exactly, and these tools are creating businesses for people who don't come from like generational wealth, don't have like backgrounds that enable them to live their life freely without having to engage. The reality is that technology is enabling spaces for a more equitable future because people are building businesses on TikTok. 17-year-olds are building multi-billion like businesses that are helping them develop their life and the life for their future family.
Yeah.
And the removal of like technology would be naive because it's helping so many lives in different ways. And for example, like doctors or let's use bioscientists for example. They're using technology to understand there's this field of study called bioinformatics, and
What is that?
So bioinformatics is like the process of like the computational process of understanding like bio data. So like gene sequencing, gene folding, genomics, and things of that nature that are traditionally very complex for human beings to understand. And what it does, in layman terms, which like is simplifying the field vastly, it's making things that are traditionally very complex and then it's making them digestible and finding ways in which we can securely and safely store biological data. Like think of Ancestry.com and how people are like, oh my God, I'm 25%, North American, or I'm 15% like European, and this, that, and the third. That is the result of bioinformatics. They're collecting data, vast amounts of data that require like incredibly strong, like and scalable, large, like infrastructure, like systems to collect these data, these pieces of data, to inform a particular decision on something. You know what I mean? And it's this whole thing, and it's like this globalization of data, and like globalization specifically has like a lot of different niches. Like a lot of people are afraid of like think of globalization as like westernization, and all these things, and it's this whole body of work that is just like really complex. But in theory, like data is connected to everything. It's connected to how we live our lives. It's connected to how we help other people, and it's connected to how we build an equitable future. Like politicians use data to understand the people that they want to influence.
Yeah, like census and shit.
Exactly, they use census data, and then environmentalists use weather data, satellite data, and all of the above. Like we're a species that survive off data, and what AI is just data in a package, pretty much. And again, like I want to emphasize that, like.
So you don't think you think it's ever gonna be a point in time where it's like that, like what people are scared of, like consciousness, like AI actually becomes conscious and can make its own decisions?
I think it will just have to. My position is, it's hard for me to say because I don't necessarily know the future of like the evolution of technology, but I do know that like when we're talking about evolution as a concept, it just requires this constant process of refinement.
Okay.
So like, okay, if you think about science, everyone, bro, thinks that science is this thing that answers all questions, and they forget that science is this ongoing process of refinement. In the early 1900s, there were people that believed that the Earth was flat. Then the Earth became a sphere, and now research indicates that the Earth is almost pear-shaped because it's an oblate sphere. And the reason for that is because we have new technology that measures the gravitational pulls of like our environment, and there's different, like based on like the North and South Pole, there's different gravitational variations that cause the shape of our planet to distort differently and to be shaped differently. And there's this relativity of wrongness. And there's this author, his name is Isaac Asimov, and he essentially he wrote this paper called The Relativity of Wrong. And he talks about how like, one of the biggest issues in America in particular is that we are, as a human species, we are conditioned to think in absolute truths and absolute like wrong. And like when you think about like the way that we're taught, you're taught that 2 + 2 = 4. And I would be like, yeah, great, you did a fantastic job, you got that right. Let's say another student says, well, 2 + 2 = 58. You're like, well, that's wrong, right? Then another student says, well, 2 + 2 is 3.99999. It's apparent that there's a relativity because one student in theory is closer to right than being wrong, but it's still wrong. So there's this relativeness to how people, how we solve problems, and science is in a way similar. Like if you look at language, if I were to tell you spell sheep, and you say, well, sheep is spelled SCHEEP, and another student says, well, sheep is spelled QRSTW. You're like, well, one is closer in theory than closer to right.
Fade here too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Go ahead.
One is closer to being. They're both wrong, but one is closer to being
The
more
right,
right.
yeah.
Exactly. So there's this relativeness, and I think his whole point in explaining this kind of ideology is that we're conditioned to think in like this kind of black and white, absolute truth or wrong mentality, and that's just not what science is. Like science is this ongoing process of like refinement, and every theory, every discovery that we make is building off other things, and we're constantly changing. That's why most articles that you read that are scientifically oriented say that we suggest, because you cannot absolutely say that something is something when you don't know fully.
Yeah.
And in the same way, like I think technology is similar because we don't know what it's capable of, but we do know that it requires refinement. And like anything else, that understanding happens with like the more we work towards refining that specific field. And again, it's hard for me to say like what that'll look like, but I do know that like you know it requires refinement because regardless it's going to happen, and without the proper parameters in place to make sure that people are safe,
Yeah.
and people feel secure and people feel like that this isn't a bad thing, the better. At the end of the day, like I think the goal of a democracy and just the goal of being a human being is to offer a feeling of safety and security, so you don't feel like your life is in jeopardy.
Yeah.
And I think that's the whole point. Like if we don't explore these uncharted like territories of knowledge, we're never going to be able to offer that security that people yearn for. Because at the end of the day, people want convenience. Like if I told you, bro, you have this car that can drive you by itself at 100% security rate, and you could sleep on your trip now that you have to drive 15 hours and you don't have to pay for a hotel, you can just drive and just knock out and not have anything to worry about, you'd be like, oh my God, like this is beautiful. Like I can just sleep, I don't have to pay for a hotel. Like I have this car that just drives me there,
Yeah.
full safety. Now, if I told you, well, there's a 44% chance that you could die, that changes the game, right?
Would you say what percentage?
A 44% that you could die. Like
Yeah.
you're gonna be like, oh no, I'm gonna drive this entire 15 hours. I'm not gonna close my eyes because I don't trust this shit. Right? But my whole argument is that if we don't work towards refining these things, we'll never get to that 99% or that 100%. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, dude, and it's so interdisciplinary. Like you mentioned, like your aspirations for including like AI and like the kind of work that you do. There are people that want to do that for medicine. There are people that want to do that for mechanical engineering. There are so many applications, and all of it requires exploring it and like collaborative work towards like as a species and as people to take all of our ideas and find something that works.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't know, like it's definitely a new emerging field, but I think the biggest thing is figuring out how to optimize it for us is probably,
Yeah.
But it's interesting, man. It's hard for me to
No,
say.
it definitely is. That's why I talk about it, cause like I be feeling like that's just like he talking about it now. You know what I'm saying? Like niggas be scared of that shit, bro, and that shit is whack to me. You know what I'm saying? Like at the end of the day, I get it and I understand. And like you said, that's what it is. People are scared of not being in control and getting to the point where it's like nobody wants that to happen. But shit. It's just like years ago, shit today, and motherfucking talking on phone. Everybody years ago was like, leave them phones alone. Like, I remember there was a point in time, everybody just had Nextels and was chirping like, oh yeah, nah, we only using this because cops listen to everything else, and this is all we listen to. And then, nigga, cops gonna listen to you regardless. Technology just keep changing, and you know what I'm saying? Like, so you're always gonna be scared of what you don't necessarily know. You get what I mean? And I definitely do understand that. You know what I mean? But I've always been just a person that's like, oh, let me try it out. If I don't like it for myself, then fine, I don't like it for myself. But I definitely do understand the advancement in technology, period, and how it's always like, you know what I mean, even just like shit at the internet or like shit was around like what 2006, and motherfuckers used to be like, what? Why would you? I'll never put my kid on the internet because it's rapists out here and stuff like that. And it still is. It's still fucking rapists everywhere, you know what I'm saying? But at the same day, it's a lot of motherfuckers that used to say that, and it'd be that first day of school, maybe posting their kids like, or especially girls. Girls do that shit a lot.
I do think that like, I don't know.
Well, I think like on the business aspect, like you was talking about the SEO and shit like that, like.
Yeah, but so many businesses, especially small businesses, are
That's the main thing, small businesses, for real.
Are trying to learn how to use these things, and that's my whole thing. Like, there's this gatekeeping like aspect of technology, where like these massive corporations are adopting ways to utilize it, and like we're in a way getting like the crumbs of what they have.
After they done with it.
Exactly.
Probably look on the good side. Yeah.
And like that's why.